Hey Mallards, it's Friday, which means it's time for only one thing. Let's talk about the newest episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. After last week's episode, which just left me completely speechless, this week's episode was very much like, hey, we're in a holding pattern, and so we're going to give you a little bit of slice of life that you've been missing. It started with Sam and Bucky taking down John Walker, which I thought was handled pretty well. Sam was the way that Sam always is, which is to say pretty level-headed, trying to be reasonable, attempting to reason and explain and sympathize and really convince John to give up the shield, which was literally never going to happen. Clearly John Walker is off of his rocker and an absolute madman. As evidenced by the end of the show, where we see him making his own Captain America shield. Because that's what egomaniacs do when you take away the thing they think they deserve. Getting some seriously nutso vibes from him. But it was nice to see Sam in his element. I watched a TikTok today that said that Steve Rogers is the America that is who America thinks they are, and John Walker is who America actually is, and Sam Wilson is who America really should be. And I felt like this scene with Sam talking down John Walker was really one of those moments where you're like, yes, Sam Wilson is who we should all strive to be. We will not, but we should strive to be him. We also saw Zemo taken away by the Wakandans to be locked in the raft. We'll see how long that lasts, if at all. Because, wow, who knows if that will work out. We also got a little bit more Sharon Carter. She is still grossly underutilized in this show. But we did get a little more taste of her. The interesting thing is that I think she's working with the Flag Smashers now, because she got Bartok on the line and offered him something, and then we saw him show up with the Flag Smashers wanting to kill Falcon. Not that I think that Sharon is trying to get Sam killed, but I'm curious to see what the angle is that they're working. There's been some discussion about maybe Sharon actually is the power broker. And that is an intriguing concept that I'm totally into and would absolutely support. But we'll have to wait and see how that shakes down in the one episode they have left. I think there's only 6 episodes of this. So I guess they'll resolve all of it or none of it this next episode. But that was really the only plot bits. We also got a little bit at the end of Carly deciding that the Flag Smashers are going to war and attacking I can't remember, I think it's GRC, Global Repatriation Council. The group that's supposed to help everybody become members of their country again after the blip. We get a moment at the end of them attacking. But that was basically all we got as far as the plot of the show, the action that we'd been building to. And instead, we got some really nice slice of life that I really, really, really enjoyed. We watched Sam go back home. He also went and had a conversation with Isaiah Bradley, where Isaiah Bradley was basically a black man can't be Captain America. And then Bucky had a conversation with Sam where he was like, when Steve and I talked about giving you the shield, we clearly didn't think this through. We didn't understand, and that's on us, and we're really sorry. And wow, the way that this show is just straight up actually discussing racial issues is really, really important. And like the recognition from Bucky that like he and Steve came from a place of privilege and clearly didn't think this through, I really, really liked. There's also a conversation that Sam and Bucky have about what Bucky's been doing in therapy and about how he's been going about things the wrong way that I thought was very helpful, because we've all talked about the fact that his therapist herself is pretty problematic. So it was nice to see a much healthier discussion happening between the two of them. And just some fun bits of them fixing Sam's family's boat and just hanging out, and the humor that they have and the interactions that they have. It is a really interesting dynamic to watch Sam and Bucky interact, because I think a lot about how Seb and Anthony Mackie, like Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie and their relationship, which I feel like is almost, not completely, but like almost opposite. So Bucky is very like stoic and some dry wit happening there. And Sam is much more like, I would say spunky maybe. And I feel like maybe they're both pretty spunky outside, but Sebastian Stan definitely like has a lot more of that energy that like Bucky doesn't have. But I love their sense of humor. One of my favorite moments in the show is when Sam is trying to fix this bolt, and Bucky's like, no, you need to move it up further. And so he takes the wrench and shuts the bolt using his right hand, which is not the vibranium arm. And Sam goes, why didn't you use the arm? And Bucky literally just says, I don't always think about it first, I am right-handed. And that just cracked me up. Like, what a real thing. He's like, yeah, but I'm right-handed, bro. So like, I just want to use my right hand. I know it's not as strong, but like, I'm right-handed. That makes a lot of sense to me. And so I enjoyed those moments. It has become a weird show where like I find myself agreeing with Zemo entirely too much. But I think that that's what I've always enjoyed about Marvel villains. I use the villains in quotes because there are some of them that I don't consider, like, they're all villains, but like sort of villains. That most of them, not all of them, Obadiah, no redeeming qualities, none whatsoever. In fact, most of the people that Iron Man faces off against, there is an idea that Iron Man essentially creates his own villains, that like his relationships cause, like his villains are always like people that he had a relationship of some sort with and caused this sort of clash. And so I think that that's why his villains are a lot less redeeming than some of the other ones. And like Red Skull has nothing redeeming about him, but Zemo has some interesting points. And I think it's cool that they can have some villains that have either views that you can see. Killmonger is another one who's a really, really great villain because he's not really a bad guy. And I feel like Zemo is sort of on that level. Less than Killmonger, but like more than like the Iron Man villains or anything like that. And more than Thanos for sure. Thanos is also one of those ones who's like definitely a villain, but you look at his thought process about people destroying the planet and like, you're like, I can sort of see where you're coming from, and I can also see why that's a problem. So there were moments that I enjoyed Zemo. I've enjoyed Zemo in this show in general, and I think that that is a lot put on the actor who plays him because he's entertaining, and when he gets the chance to make choices, he always makes really, really funny choices. And the dynamic between like Zemo, Sam, and Bucky has been really good. But I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed exploring more of the relationship between Sam and Bucky and giving them a chance to actually have some conversations, which was good. And I love Sam's learning to use the shield montage because I think it's really important. But then they were total teases because Bucky had shown up with this gift that he clearly used the very last bit of goodwill that he's gotten from Wakanda to get. And I can only assume that it is a new set of wings for Sam, or maybe a full-on Captain America suit for Sam. That's what I'm hoping it is. And so the case was just sitting there like some sort of Chekhov's gun, and then they open it at the very end and we don't get to see in it. So I have to wait a whole week to find out what's in that case, and that's annoying. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I liked the slice of life. It was a change from what we've seen so far. And I can't wait to see what happens next week. I could wait for there to be more John Walker. Like, I would have been fine if he'd gotten court-martialed and then he ended up on the raft. Like, please, you could send him away and I don't ever have to see him again. But clearly, they're setting him up to cause real-world problems, and I guess we'll deal with that. I will see you guys tomorrow.